A lovely good morning. It's yet another interesting Thursday edition of the Camnet Breakfast Show, Governance, Policy and Politics. Today it is interesting because we are looking at the Africa Freedom Day. I'm Patrick Soko, your usual host, and my co-host today is Prudence Chota. Good morning.
Good morning, Patrick Soko. Indeed, African Freedom Day, it is today. We are celebrating. But the question, Patrick Soko, that we are also asking is Africa really free? I think these are some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Even when we are making or celebrating these particular events, let's be asking, is Africa indeed free? If we are not, what is it that we need to do to ensure that we remain a free continent?
Yes, interesting. That's quite an interesting question. Are we really free? We are talking about economic freedom. Other countries are still struggling when it comes to political freedom. So those are things we need to be interrogating as Africans. And you too, you can give us your expertise or your perspective on the program this morning on how you are celebrating Africa Freedom Day. What are you reflecting on? What is the Africa we want to see? When we talk about issues pertaining to regional integration, there are quite a number of interesting issues, Prudence. We are looking at the African passport. We are looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We are looking at the COMESA. We are looking at the SADC. We are looking at the ECOWAS. All those regional blocks, they form part of Africa, and they are quite instrumental in us achieving the Africa agenda. Now, we'll be delving more into this subject of Africa Freedom Day later on, but first of all, let's just get started to know what Dr. Mufai has for us, especially when it comes to us knowing about our health and well-being.
Good morning and welcome to the Health Corner here on the Breakfast Show. I am Dr. Nakubia Namfaya. So this week we are talking about pneumonia, and yesterday we talked about some of the signs and symptoms of pneumonia. We say that pneumonia can present with a cough. Patients who have pneumonia could have a cough, they could have fever, or have difficulties in breathing, where they're breathing too fast, and sometimes they would have chest pain as well. So today we'll talk about the diagnosis and treatment of pneumonia. How is it diagnosed in the hospital and how is it treated? So in terms of diagnosis, you'll be told to do a chest x-ray, which is the main thing that you have to do if you have pneumonia. So the chest x-ray will be able to show where the pneumonia is, or where the infection is in the lungs, and it will be able to show the extent of the disease as well. It can also show if it's not a pneumonia and if it's any other condition that is there in the lungs. If you have probably water that has accumulated in the lungs, it can also be seen on the chest x-ray. It can show if it's just, for example, TB in the chest. It can be seen on the chest x-ray. So it's important that the chest x-ray is done if you are going to be able to tell if someone has pneumonia. The other tests that can be done are blood tests, and these will be able to show that there's an infection going on, and it will show also how much blood you have, if you have the normal amount of blood and other chemicals in the body, if they're within normal ranges as well. Then the other tests that can be done to confirm pneumonia, or to confirm what type of bacteria is causing the pneumonia, is a test called sputum microscopy culture insensitivity. So this is a test that is done on the sputum. So you'll be asked to produce some sputum, or to cough and produce some sputum, and take it to the lab, where it will be tested to see what type of bacteria is in that sputum. And when they identify the bacteria, then they can also identify what type of medication can be used to cure that bacteria. So it's important that you submit a sputum sample to the lab so that we can tell whether it's a bacteria, or if it's not a bacteria, then is it a virus or is it a fungi. So sputum samples are very important, and you need to submit those samples so that we can be able to tell and treat you correctly with the right medication. So talking about treatment, there are different treatments that can be used for pneumonia, and it will depend on whether it's a viral infection or a bacterial infection, or if it's a fungal infection. So it's not all pneumonias that have to be treated with antibiotics. Some pneumonias will need antifungal medications because it's a fungi that is causing the pneumonia. So people who don't like to go to the hospital to get tested, it would be a disadvantage to them if they only treat themselves at home without going to the hospital, because if it's a fungal infection and you use back antibiotics, for example, then it means that you're not curing that fungi, and it's going to continue growing, and by the time you're getting to the hospital, then it has become a severe disease. So it's important to get treatment early. You go to the hospital and receive the correct treatment for the infection that you're having. So if it's a viral infection, usually there are antivirals that can be used depending on what type of virus it is. Sometimes with viral infections, they resolve on their own, so it would go away on its own because it's a virus, and so we can't use antibiotics for it. And there's some viruses that are self-limiting, so they will go away on their own after some time. So that is how pneumonia can be treated in the hospital. And depending on what type of pneumonia, like I have said, you'll be given the correct type of treatment. So make sure that you go to the hospital to get the correct treatment from the doctor, and do not self-prescribe medication at home. So today we're talking about the diagnosis and treatment, and we say that to diagnose pneumonia, you need to do a chest x-ray, you need to do a sputum test, and you also need to do some blood tests. Then for treatment, you can have a viral pneumonia or a bacterial or a fungal pneumonia, and so the treatment will be different. Make sure you go to the hospital to get tested and to be able to determine what type of treatment that you need for the pneumonia that you have. I do hope you have learned something. Make sure you watch again tomorrow, where we'll talk about how you can prevent pneumonia at home and what are some of the complications that can arise if you don't treat pneumonia early. So make sure you watch tomorrow. Again, invite your friends to watch as well. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Facebook at Dr. Nakubena Mfaya. I'll see you again next time. Stay blessed and stay healthy.
Welcome back. You are still watching the Camnet Breakfast Show with me, Patrick Soko, and Prudence Chota. And we were listening to Dr. Mufaya there. She never disappoints when it comes to giving us health updates. And today we're looking at something on ammonia, on diagnosis and the treatment. And I hope you managed to get one or two things. It is important that you keep abreast with matters pertaining to health. It is the only way you will know the symptoms and the signs so that you can seek medical attention. However, whatever we give you on this program is just to help you know and understand. Know that we can provide treatment here, so but you have to seek medical attention to the nearest health center. And this segment also is up for sponsorship in case you want to partner with us or bring your adverts. We can partner and we continue informing the nation on various issues pertaining to health. Prudence.
Of course, Patrick Soko there, Dr. Mfaya never disappoint, as you've mentioned. She's discussed a number of things, how you can have those symptoms of the pneumonia and how is it that you can go about when you go to health facilities. But I like a point where you said ours is not to provide diagnosis, but we just provide tips on how you would know a particular condition for you to get treatment. So that was Dr. Mufaya. You can follow her. She's also got a YouTube channel. And if you have a particular topic that you would like her to discuss, you can send it through the numbers that are on the screen or write us a message on our Facebook page, and we will be able to respond as quick as possible. So that was what we could accommodate this morning on the health corner. But also we are going to look at the money market. How is it that our local currency is performing against other major convertibles? That is Kwacha. How is it performing against other major convertibles? So as today, 25th of May 2023, this is how our local currency is performing against other major convertibles. Kwacha there against the euro is buying at 20 kwacha 52 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 92 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the South African rand is buying at 0.99 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 01 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the Great British Pound is buying at 23 kwacha 59 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 06 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the United States dollar, the one which we usually make reference to, is buying at 19 kwacha 02 ngwe and selling at 19 kwacha 40 ngwe. Kwacha there becoming under pressure, and we've seen now against the kwacha, against the US dollar, it's at 19 kwacha 02 ngwe. Against the South African rand, it has already gone to 0.99 ngwe. Why I've made reference to these two particular currencies, Patrick, so is because these are the countries that we usually trade with. If you look at South Africa, we import a lot of things from South Africa, and when the kwacha does not perform well, even most of the goods that we import, for those of us who do businesses, you order things from South Africa, you would attest that when the currency is performing well, orders are easy to make, and you know it's at that level. But where it begins to depreciate, like what we are seeing now, we should embrace for tougher times, because now even against the US dollar, we've seen it now go to 19 kwacha 02 ngwe, that is buying, and selling at 19 kwacha 40 ngwe. That is not what we expected to see, considering that we just a month ago recorded an appreciation in our local currency. I think we needed to have maintained that.
Yeah, so if you look at that aspect of how the kwacha is performing against the US dollar, it shows that our kwacha has been cosmetic in terms of the measures we are putting in place as a country. So the only sustainable way of us stabilizing the country, strengthening as well as making sure that the kwacha is strong over time, is making sure that we maximize our export portfolio, especially on non-traditional export. And also our traditional exports are not performing as expected because we depend on copper. But if you look at the major copper mines we have on the copper belt, that's Konkola copper mines, KCM as well as Mopani, you are able to see that they haven't been operating at optimum level, because we still have a pending issue between government and Vedanta, and we also have issues of recapitalizing of Mopani mines. So those two mines are not operating as effective as they should, and we are mostly depending on First Quantum. So if you look at how we need to maximize our export portfolio, we have to do a lot as a country to ensure that these processes, the talks behind these two mines, are expedited, so that we are able to gain traction, especially when it comes to us maximizing our export portfolio.
And you've said something very important, Patrick. So you've said Konkola Copper Mine and Mopani are not performing according to expectation. And the question that we are asking on the breakfast show this morning is, Africa really free? Because you know, we're in all this mess because we had a foreign company that was running our entity here in Zambia, and because they became the rightful owner of our mines, today we are going through this predicament where you know, issues have to take too long for you to resolve. We've had now families that have been affected because they are not working. Mopani is not fully functioning, or Konkola is not fully functioning. So this brings us to the topic that we are discussing this morning. Remember, today is Africa Freedom Day, and of course a lot of celebrations will be taking place. I know at the Freedom Statue here in Lusaka, already activities are underway for the commemorating of this year's African Freedom Day. But the question that we are asking you is, Africa really free? So you can call us on the numbers that are on the screen and we can get to interact. What do you think about this particular topic? What other African countries can you make reference to that are actually free, Patrick? And of course, Zambia, are we really free? Is Africa free? And when we talk about freedom, we talk about freedom economic-wise. Patrick Soko, we look at political-wise, we look at trade-wise. If there is that issue that we can talk about, we've got the African Continental Free Trade Area, which everyone is now talking about. We will be having a discussion around those areas, Patrick. So, but of course, we are asking ourselves this morning: is Africa really free? That is the topic of discussion. And of course, my colleague Patrick here made reference to the fact that Mopani and Konkola are not functioning, and we know why they are not, because the owners. Hey, Patrick, this hurts me. Yeah, I don't even know how to say. The owners of Mopani and Konkola Copper Mine had issues that resulted in the matter going to court.
Yeah, for me, I think there's that aspect which the previous government, partly even this government, and other opposition political parties have been talking about prudence. Look at, you can bring a foreign investor, but they should not own our land. And they will bring the capital, but we are owning the resources. But what we do is that we give out everything. We give out our land, we give out our minerals, then we give out our taxes. Does that add up?
They are not even now paying taxes. Remember the Zambia Revenue Authority, in that meeting we had about a couple of weeks ago, they did mention that in the first quarter of 2023, they failed to raise the revenue that was needed from the mining sector, because these mining sectors, despite being given those tax holidays, even those small taxes that they've been left with paying, they are not paying.
Yeah.
And even the Bank of Zambia confirmed it last week when they said, we didn't raise enough money from the mining sector. So what we had to do now is we had to go to the reserves and get money from there. But look at this, we've got mines, but we have to go to the reserves to get some money to offload in the economy. What are the mines doing in the country?
Yeah, so that gets, that's how I was telling you in my preamble to say we are running a cosmetic economy, because offloading reserves from our reserves is a temporal measure to just keep inflation in check. But how long are we going to be offloading? And are we going, at the time where our coffers are empty, are we going to offload empty coffers? You understand? It also draws me back to the statements that Felix Mutati used to make reference to, where you cannot spend what you don't have. So we'll reach the time we cannot offload what we don't have. So and then what happens to the economy? It goes berserk. Now everything now gets, the inflation gets mad. And the high cost of living gets mad. So, and now Zambians now will be left now wondering. So now we are looking at us making use of our resources. We have gold, we have other minerals, prudence, nickel, we have sujilite.
The noise maker at the moment. And what is interesting about sujilite is if you go to the Ministry of Mines website, you want to get information about minerals. When you click gold, you'll find information. When you click copper, you'll find. When you click on sujilite, they'll tell you this is a no-go area. The fact that lock that information about sujilite, because they are still doing some background information to ensure that this ore mineral is also put onto the perspective. So what government has done is they've locked that page on sujilite. Like when you go to their page, you want to access sujilite, they'll tell you you cannot access this information at the moment. And we just hope that information will quickly be made available to the Zambian people, because we want to know, sujilite is expensive. They are saying the truck of sujilite costs how much?
Why can't we assemble a group of Zambians who have money to partner and make sure that they run the sujilite mine and the resources remain in the country, and we are exporting as a country. But we always seek foreign direct investment.
What is just interesting also is that the sujilite, that was captured at Central Province, the one which brought a lot of noise, that was just mined by ordinary Zambians. How did they manage to mine that?
Without complicated equipment.
And meaning we can mine and we are capable of mining our own sujilite. Should we look for an investor, Patrick, to come outside? If those few people manage to do the tracks, because the rumor had it that they did 4 tracks, we've not seen the 4, we know 1, because that's the information we have. But if they did manage to mine 1 track of sujilite in the short period that they had and with the equipment that they had, imagine if they were empowered with equipment by government and told to mine, how much we would make from that.
You see, quite interesting. So in case you want to join the conversation here, we are talking about Africa Freedom Day, and our topic of discussion is themed, is Africa really free? And we are asking that question. In case you have a perspective on that, you can do that by giving us that call, and we get interacting on the Camnet breakfast show this morning. Let's look at some of the stories that were in the main news. Prudence, what do we have?
Yes, we know we've been talking about the issue of Konkola and Mopani. Yesterday, the Mines Minister Paul Kabuswe actually did hold a press briefing where he updated us on the two mines. And according to Mr. Kabuswe, government has resolved the hiccups that delayed the conclusion of Mopani and Konkola copper mines negotiations. Addressing journalists in Lusaka Wednesday, Mr. Kabuswe says some legal issues popped up during the negotiations which resulted in the delays, but has assured that government will soon be making an announcement regarding the two mines. Soon. We've heard this word over and over, soon. Meanwhile, the mines minister says the government has released a new mining policy and is in the process of formulating a mining commission awaiting parliament approval. So a mining commission, what he was saying is that this commission is now what is going to be looking at how much the mines are making. Where, you know, the mines makes this and they declare that they've made this is coming to an end, because when the commission is in place, they'll be checking how much the mine has produced and if it is tearing with the declarations that they are making. So he was even warning mining companies to say, watch out if you are in a habit of giving wrong information, because as soon as the commission is in place, they will be responsible for that. But before we say much, let's look at this story that made headline in our news yesterday. Mines Minister Paul Kabuswe says the race to have Mopani and Konkola copper mines become fully functional has not come to an end, as government is in the process of concluding the negotiations and will be making an announcement soon. Mr. Kabuswe, who addressed the media Wednesday morning, says the negotiations delayed to conclude because legal matters popped up during the negotiation process, but says the matter has been resolved and that negotiations will be concluded sooner than anticipated.
But believe you me, we are closer to closure than you think. And as the president said, certain legal issues cropped up which disturbed our timelines. There are certain things in the legal fraternity which you cannot block but allow time to pass. And we are to bite the bullet and allow time to pass and go beyond the first quarter. I want to assure the people of Zambia and the people of the Copper Belt.
Meanwhile, the minister has also revealed that the new mining policy has been released and that the government is in the process of setting up a minerals commission that will be monitoring mining activities in the country.
To be implemented. Why am I emphasizing the aspect of time? Because a lot of people have been saying, no, this government is just about rhetoric. They just talk. I don't know whether doing a policy is talking. Doing a policy is action. So we acted, we did a policy. From the policy, now we said we are implementing what the policy is saying. And number one priority, like I said, is the Minerals Commission, which we have done now.
Among other issues, the minister says government is going full throat in the mineral exploration and says 100 cooperatives have so far been formed and will be assisted with equipment for the use in mining explorations.
We are going full throttle exploration and mapping of this country, and these discussions are seriously underway. It requires time and it requires us to do the right thing. Cooperatives are in place. The Ministry of Mines is already procuring gold detectors and other equipment for these cooperatives to empower them. So you can see that we have a very clear path where we are going.
And when asked why the mining sector is not fully paying taxes to the Zambia Revenue Authority despite being given tax holidays, the minister had this to say.
I must know that in the month of June, the Pokabuswe mining company mined 50 tons. 50 tons will attract a particular level of tax or mineral royalty. So, for them to know, they will work hand in hand now with the regulator who will tell them.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News. There you have it, Mines Minister Paul Kabuswe addressing the nation, and the first thing that he talked about was the issue of Konkola and Mopani copper mines. The minister did indicate that during the time they were doing negotiations, some legal hiccups popped up. And he also mentioned that, say, you know, this cannot be avoided because remember this issue was already in court, so it had already attracted legal issues. So when we were doing negotiations, before we could conclude, some legal issues popped up, and you know we had to follow the process smoothly to ensure that we don't make a mistake. But he assured that the hiccups have been resolved and that government will be making an announcement soon. Patrick, so this gives me thought. You know, this is not the first time we are hearing the mines minister mention the word soon. when it comes to Mopani and Kokola Kopaman. We've been hearing it from last year.
They needed to do it in the first quarter of 2023 as well.
He even mentioned to say, I know we promised that we will resolve this issue in the first quarter, and we apologize for failing to fulfill that. But anyway, it's African Freedom Day. Is Africa really free? Let's get to hear what one of the callers has to say this morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. You are through to Camnet TV Breakfast Show. Tell us the name and where you're calling us from.
Thank you so much. Professor, good morning, sir.
Good morning, the voice of Munali.
The voice of Munali from the tourist capital here.
Yes, speak to us this morning.
Thank you so much. I think he is now the voice of Livingston Central.
You are now becoming a voice of Livingston Central. You have abandoned Munali.
Where people are really appreciating the 35th village.
Interesting.
Sure, when I'm not talking the voice of Munali, yeah, the general prayer foundation.
Oh, interesting. Represent the people of Livingston.
So, I want to start by actually advising the opposition that it is very, very important that sometimes they must get like that is from Chama House PF level parents. What is really a patriotic example, when man is 60, they must actually have that courage to applaud what the government. Whatever we promised the people proud election, it's actually coming to us, pushing. I think to do with the conquer the mining issue got a very, very competent minister, talk about it. He got here from the explanation, from the articulation which he made. I think it made the point very, very clear. We are people who believe in the rule of law, not law by them. That was the more reason because of all legal jargon that is involved. That's the more reason why it took a bit of time. That's the concorder, whatever issue to be exhausted. So otherwise, a ban, whatever it was, can be passed, blocked to people. That is, we are going to attract the price of made to that government. Now, we promise to say that we are going to revitalize and actually get the government. And we want to realize that the money that was going to be spent in terms of revitalizing the national people are just much more than that million grant. And that's the only reason why now that it is establishing a new plant at Landa, because we're going to create thousands of jobs. By so doing, maybe that's the time that we could have produce, once it's not produced, simply means that the cost of production is going to be lower. It really means that next year, if you have to pay the floor price of this at 100%, farmers will still be making a lot of money. So for us, otherwise, so far so good, we are sharing the level and value is on top of it, abiding with the law of law. I think the professor have a great day. We enjoy the Livingston Central quality capital.
Thank you very much. That was the voice of Munali, Comrade Chinza. They are giving us his perspective.
Of course, he says it's now voice of
Livingston Central. Livingston Central. Interesting. Now is representing the people of Southern Province. And you too can give us your perspective in case you also want to join the conversation. We are asking the question, is Africa really free? And also we are zooming in the stories where you can also give us your perspective. We're just looking at a story where the Minister of Mines was bringing out quite critical issues pertaining to national development. The issues pertaining to Mopani as well as KCM, he says that soon that issue will be long gone and they would have addressed it. And we hope it lives to the expectation of the people, because the people of the Copper Belt Prudence are anxious.
He even actually said it to say, I was on the Copper Belt, I think just last week, and I could see from the people to say, people are really eager to see this thing come to life. He said, I could see the anger in the eyes of people because we've taken long to resolve this issue. But let's accommodate another caller. Hello, good morning. Hello?
Hello, good morning. Good morning. I think we've lost that call. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from, sir? Mumbo. How is Mumbo this morning?
Yeah, Mumbo is okay.
Thank you. You can go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Yes. To me, I think the announcement that I just mentioned by our because when mines where there is an ecosystem. It's like they rush to go to the media when they have not done a lot of occupation on the ground. So because of that fact, today they come to speak to, tomorrow again they come to speak to, and then the other day again to. So now it's up to people here and after this working. So to me, Madam President, all the ministers, they need to best, because they go to the media, because they go and make an announcement, let them do a good job on the ground. That's the fact. Okay? So that even when they are carrying, they are able to give the particular to people. Okay? Then it looks like they are looking with the what? With the technical. Okay, but when I come to the tomorrow again, we say, but really, it is not okay.
Interesting. Thank you very much for your views, sir. We value your contribution. Remember, on Camnet TV, every opinion counts, and we are just looking at one story. That's the story where the Minister of Mines was giving us an update pertaining to development in the sector. However, people are now giving us their views, and I think the story has captured the interest of our viewers, and they are giving the perspective. An interesting perspective. It does point out which other ministries also have to do, make sure that they do the groundwork before announcing.
Coming to the media.
Yeah, before coming to the media. We don't want to see Madam Chota making a pronouncement to say, I'm here.
Soon.
Yeah.
Again soon.
Again
Soon. Yeah, that has been said. That is
yeah, because people, when they see you next, they say, okay, now we are, the results are
people
in.
want to hear something, and then you come back and say soon.
Yeah, so that's an interesting view there. And,
so this does not just apply to the Minister of Mines. It says even other ministries, please go work with technocrats, do background research, go on the ground, so that when you come to the media to make an announcement, it is something that is substantial. You know, I feel the pain, Patrick Soko, and I sympathize with these people. You know, where you are really expecting, you are anxious, anxiously expecting a very important call.
Yes.
And you are like on your phone expecting this important call, and then a call comes in, and then it's just someone, you know, there is that anger that comes about because you want, anyway, let's continue that conversation after getting this call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Camnet.
Good morning, sir. Where are you calling us from, and your name?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
I'm calling from Luanda.
Akopala.
I want to contribute on the Camnet paper.
All right, you can go ahead, sir.
My contribution is Africa won't be free without ourselves mining or doing things on our own. I like the way the lady said. She said, as long as we can do things on our own, we are still being found by other people.
Thank you. There you have it, Luansha. I think the perspective is straightforward. He's agreeing with you that if we are not going to do things on our own, it will be possible for us to be really free as a country, even as a continent as a whole. If you look at Prudence, like I was saying, the focus for us as Zambians, you know, we should learn lessons from what has happened at KCM. You know, we made them own the entire mine now. Now, when we take them to court now, they are the sole owners.
There is a huge bundle there.
Yes. And you know, when we are taking these matters to court, these people have complicated lawyers. Lawyers who are able to manipulate these systems. Lawyers who know how to go past the systems and be able to win cases, big cases, Prudence. These are international lawyers, you understand? So now, even us as Zambia, to compete with them, it means we need to hire lawyers at that level, and that's costly. So already the matter pertaining to KCM, Zambia has lost a lot of money to just make sure that this case will go to court, this court
and the worst part, Patrick Soko, is the more you delay operating a mine, the more the mine gets damaged or destroyed. Because you know there are equipment, there is a system. So if you are not, for example, fully functioning, you realize that sometimes even equipment
Gets damaged. Yeah,
gets
wear and
damaged.
tear. We
Yes,
have
it
wear and
starts
tear. Yeah.
wearing out. And even if you bring in a new investor,
They have
for them
to
to come
also
and
say.
fully begin to function, there are a number of things they have to change. So even the investment has to be huge. So you see the issues with this legal battle. And of course, there our caller mentioned to say, as long as we cannot mine in our own country, we are not free.
We
But
are
this
not.
is the truth. So
We
today
are
is
not.
African Freedom Day, and the topic of discussion is Africa really free? So we are discussing that, and a number of calls and perspectives have come in. And we also zoomed in one of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday, where the mine minister was speaking to the country.
Let's pick another call. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Fine, and how are you?
I'm okay. This is Jason calling you from Kitwe.
Kitwe, how is Kitwe this morning?
Yes, sir. In fact, looking at the data on this thing, we are still colonized economically. Yes, to point to the mind that the point that the main minister said yesterday. You think, as we don't have to concise everything. Let's have for ample time and have a lasting process to our mind. If we are going to write in the green things, we find ourselves after 4 5 years, again, we are still another investor. We have to have ample time and look for a suitable investor who can sustain our mind. Our policy also to be able to employ more people and with more production. And the government should be given ample time to find a credible investor who can sustain our money. That is very important. And also for that, I think let them just be open to the government and say them that what are their ideas, not to the Roland, to the Roland, I think of the let them be open to the media and to tell us what they are planning, what they want to achieve, how long it will take, so that we get to be able to know what we are looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution, sir.
No, okay.
So interesting. You too can give us your perspective on the Camnet Breakfast Show this morning. We are discussing is Africa really free on Africa Freedom Day? And the numbers are on your screens in case you want to get in touch with us. You can do so using our 096 number or our 097 number to get in touch and interact with us on the studio. You can also leave us a message on our socials, being on our Facebook as well as our YouTube channel. We are streaming the Camnet Breakfast Show on these two platforms. So you can give us your views or leave us a message. Just share your insights on Africa Freedom Day, and we get the conversation going. It is also important, like our previous caller did mention, Prudence, that we need to be having, for instance, mining intervals. And also so that we can get ideas. You know, you don't know who has the best idea. It can be you, Prudence, providing a solution to the government, and the government implements it, and we are well off as a country. So we need to be tapping from each other's knowledge to go now to run these affairs, because at the end of the day, these are our affairs. They are not affairs of somebody else, but ourselves. So we need to make sure that every time we are confronted with challenges, we continuously engage and consult each other. Besides, democracy is about diversity in ideas. So let's pick this other call. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, sir. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Sai.
Okay.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from.
I'm calling you from Suffolk.
Okay.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. We can hear you. You are calling us from Kamala South, and you are Mr. Okay, you can go ahead with your contribution.
What I can say is, hello?
Yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Sure, sir. Speaking to the issue where the also with the political ticket, very much democratic.
The line is
pretty bad. You are cutting and breaking. Can you just move a little bit from where you are? Maybe we can get you clearly.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, if the volume on your TV set is loud, just tune down the volume.
Okay. What I can say is basically, you know?
Okay, we seem to have a bad reception there. And let's do call us back when you have a better network, because we can't hear what you are trying to say, sir. So make sure that you are well positioned at a place where the network is a bit good, because we can hardly get you. And make sure you turn off the volume of your TV set, because we can get feedback, and feedback is not good for our ears.
Of course, but remember, today's topic of discussion is Africa really free. Remember, today, the 25th of May 2023 is Africa Freedom Day. Every year on 25th of May, we do celebrate African Freedom Day. There are a lot of activities that have been organized today. If you're passing through Lusaka's Central Business District at the Freedom Statue there, you will realize that there is a decoration that has been happening there, because we will be having the head of state address the nation at the African Freedom Day and at the Freedom Statue in Lusaka. But the question we are asking on the breakfast show is, Africa really free? So that is a topic of discussion, and you too can be part of the discussion by calling the numbers on the screen, and let's get to conversate. Our previous caller there from Lusaka, we were unable to hear you because we could hear the line was breaking, but we want to give you an opportunity to also air your view on this particular topic. So please do call us back, and we'll be able to attend to that call before 09 hours, because that's when we conclude our program. Then also we are zooming to some of the stories that made headline. I know the first story that we've zoomed in, Patrick Soko, is a story of great concern, and the topic of concern that is. So before we get to dig deeper, let's also pick up another call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Fine, thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm what I think.
Please tell us your name, where you're calling us from, and you can go ahead with your comment, contribution, or submissions.
Okay, I want to clarify the question.
Yes, please.
Yes, I know the Africa citizen. So, what I'm trying to make are you saying or are you saying
Africa, because we are talking about Africa Freedom Day, so we are asking, is Africa really free? And remember,
Zambia
is part of Africa. That's why at the beginning of the program, we also said you can even make reference to other African countries.
To other African countries? Okay, madam.
Okay, wanted to get that clarification. So yeah, okay, thank you very much for your observation. So interesting. So we are looking about Africa Freedom Day. So this day is celebrated everywhere in Africa.
Everywhere in Africa.
So now this is the Africa Day. So we are looking at Zambia is part of Africa, and if you are interested in matters that affect Zambia, you can give us the perspective of Zambia. If you're not happy with what is happening in the DRC, you can equally share, because other countries in the region are affected by wars, and wars that are seeing the infiltration of foreign interests. And you are seeing that, for example, even South Sudan, we are still having wars. This is Africa. And Africa, why are we still having this conflict?
Patrick, Africa, my Africa. You know, when I look at how many countries have had wars in the entire world.
And coups. You can see, we have a lot of coups.
Let's just narrow it down to Africa. In Africa, it's too much. Talk about Sudan.
Yes.
Talk about Somalia.
Yes.
Talk about the DRC, just by name.
Our neighbors.
Talk about Iraq.
In Mozambique.
Why do we have so much wars in Africa than any other continent? Because so far in the Europe, the war that we've had, which we've hate to say, no, there is all this happening. Maybe we can talk about the Russia and Ukraine war. And again, after this, you know, the people who've been affected the most is Africa. So the question we are asking, is Africa really free?
No.
Because you just have Russia and Ukraine fighting, and Africa is now being affected. If you look at all the countries, their currency at the moment is not performing well against these other major competitors. Even South African currency against the US dollar, it's not been performing quite well. Talk about Zambia here. Already we've seen our local currency, they have started depreciating. Talk about just DRC, talk about Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe this year is going to the polls. Remember, they are having elections. And there's been all this talk to say, Mnangagwa, Sisikem is not done anything.
Too many wars. Central African Republic, Mali, still engulfed in wars and confusion.
Why?
So now, if you look about freedom, how do you steer now economic freedom in the absence of peace? It becomes impossible or rather difficult. So now, when we are talking about this Africa Freedom Day, is Africa really free? A lot of issues are affecting us as a continent. Now, we are talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, for example, Prudence. Let me bring you one perspective to you about Africa and its freedom. We have the African Union that is highly sponsored by the European Union, that is highly sponsored by China. Now, is that what we call economic independence? So our African leaders cannot manage to mobilize resources and finance themselves. This is a perspective which the Kenyan President William Ruto was talking about for this. He was emphasizing this important aspect to say there is no way we should have an African body that is highly dependent on the European Union. And this African Union wants to steer the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, if you look at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, now, every time these African countries are dependent of foreign direct investments from the West or from the East or from name it, or from the West. Now, these people from the European Union, for example, they come to Africa and to Zambia in particular, for example. They will come and set up companies. And these companies start trading with the Africa. Now, do you call it African trade? No. For me, I don't believe that that's Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The free trade area should mean that Prudence and your small company should trade with another Zimbabwean, with another Congolese, but you should be Africans for Africans. That's the agenda, as opposed to. No wonder you'd see that these other bodies would be sponsoring these African Union. So the Continental Free Trade Area works and functions so that they can maximize trade amongst themselves, because a company that is set up in Zambia may not have privilege to trade in DRC. But if you have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it means that that company will really were using that channel to export to that other country. And we are also talking about the Agenda 2063 for the African Union, which also look about the common interest and especially pertaining to even the movement of people. Now, these people, when you ease the movements of people, they automatically will benefit as African amongst ourselves. But no, these foreign interests who invest in other Africans to benefit themselves. You understand? So at the end of the day, how African is this process is what we are looking at even as we commemorate Africa Freedom Day. These are aspects we need to be interrogating.
These are the questions that we should be asking. For example, if this big company, we know of European companies, Patrick Soko.
Yes.
Today they come to Zambia and set up, this big manufacturing company. Are they also privileged to trade in the African Continental Free Trade Area? Because if that's what we are going to be looking at,
that's not
then
an African agenda.
Killing our own African businesses. Because if I'm making soap, anyway, I'll finish that thought. Let me just pick this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. You are through to Camnet TV Breakfast Show. Please tell us your name, where you're calling us from, and you can join in the conversation.
Okay, I'm calling you from
Calling us from where?
I'm calling you from.
Pardon?
I'm calling you from
Garden Chilulu?
Yes, madam.
All right, so
please.
You can go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Yes, I wanted to find out why are we called
You wanted to?
Why are we called?
Why are we?
Are we called? Why are we called?
Okay, your line is pretty bad. It's cutting and down. So
It's
I think you can repeat your question.
I want to understand the meaning of Africa.
You want to understand the meaning of Africa?
The meaning of Africa and why Africa.
And why we are called Africans?
Yes, Africa today.
Okay. Interesting.
That's a very interesting question, and it's just given me an idea. Patrick, so I think on the breakfast show today we should have invited an historian to come and give us a little background about Africa and how we came to exist and what do we really mean and stuff like that. Yeah.
So but the simple answer, Prudence, based on social studies, that Africa is one of the continent. You understand? We have Europe, we have Asia, we have South America, but Africa is one of the continent. So now this Africa is as countries in it, 54 countries in it. They are one. So they are governed by the African Union. So that's what forms Africa. So Africa is a continent, and Africa is highly a black dominated continent. We also have Africans of foreign origin, but Africa is a black people continent, and over time we have these mixed races and everything and of people in Africa. But Africa is a continent, just like the European Union, just Europe, just like South America, just like North America, just like Asia. So Africa is also a continent. It's a group of countries that form Africa, and Zambia is part of those countries that belong to this continent. That's a simple illustration I can give in terms of what is Africa. So now Africa as a continent as business with other continents, and that's
the question was asking
aspects.
is that why are we called Africa? And then what is the meaning of even Africa? Maybe we've got Afro Air, which is Africa.
Give that perspective. Can you give that perspective? Give him that perspective again. You can
No, Patrick Soko, it can't be explained better than you have. Of course, when you talk about Africa, it's an African continent. You know, we've got other continents like Asia, we've got North America, we've got, other continents that are in the world. And then if we're filled with black people, for lack of a better word, because if you say black, Egypt will argue, they will say, as we are this fair skin, and we've also seen Morocco, which also argues from that perspective. Yes. But Africa is a continent with a lot of countries, just like Asia. Asia cannot say, but why are we called Asia? Yes, it's a continent with quite a number of countries in there. So this is also the meaning of Africa. And then maybe perhaps because we are full of, black people, it would actually be good to know how Africa came into existence. I think we did learn the history of way back, of which some of the things we can't even remember, but there was that migration and people came, settled to Africa, it was called Africa and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a thought for another day, where we will invite an historian just to come and explain Africa, where are we coming from, why are we called Africans, and why is it that usually in Africa we have people with black skin existing on the African continent, as opposed to other countries like Asia and other countries like Europe and stuff like that. So maybe that's a good question and a thought for another day. But what we know so far is that Africa is a continent or in the world which is of course filled with people of color. We don't call them black, but people of color. That's the word that we wanted to use, because we've got mixed races in Africa.
There's also an explanation about the origin of Africa. Let me read out this perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's Africa originated from Egypt, the Egyptian word Afru-Ika. That's the Egyptian word, Afru-Ika, which translated into motherland. Dr. Van Setma, Africa comes from the Arabic word fik or freak, which means separate or divide or conquer. You understand?
Yes, of course,
so
Africa,
that's if you want to understand the meaning, why people were coming, why they called it Africa and not Prudence. You get a not Prudence continent
and not America.
And not America. So but that's the origin of Africa. So it's an Egyptian word, and it means separate, divide or conquer. And for sure Africa is a conqueror. And it's just the conqueror now that undermines its potential.
It was usually, if I remember the history in the background, Patrick Soko, we did see a lot of people that were conquering aspects coming to settle into Africa. Like, where you are trying to move away from something and then you conquer a particular clan, land and stuff like that, then people came to settle in Africa. But anyway, good thought there. But today we are celebrating African Freedom Day. And the question we are asking on the Camnet Breakfast Show is Africa really free? I know a number of aspects are being discussed today. You see a lot of settlements, a lot of questions from a lot of people out there, but the question that we are asking is Africa really free? That's the question on the breakfast. So you too can be part of the conversation by calling us, giving us your perspective, your contribution and submissions, your questions, and we'll be able to tackle them where we can. And then also Ada Patrick Soko, we zoomed into one of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday, and that was from the Mines Minister Paul Kabuso, who was updating the country. And then he says the issue to do with Mopani and Konkola copper mine will soon be coming to a conclusion because the hiccups that popped up when they were doing the negotiations have been tabled by government. That was the mining minister speaking yesterday. Yeah,
there's another interesting story we can look at is the story where Chishimba Kambwili, and that's the Patriotic Front presidential hopeful, has actually pleaded not guilty. And that's pertaining to a case where he was accused of
unlawful assembly.
So, and we can look at that story, Prudence, and then we continue interacting with our viewers on our topic of discussion.
Of course, Patriotic Front presidential aspirant Chishimba Kambwili and PF Youth Charles Kakula have pleaded not guilty to a charge of unlawful assembly and expressive racial remarks. The duo denied the allegations Wednesday following the issuance of consent by the Director of Public Prosecution to have their matter prosecuted. Meanwhile, speaking shortly after his court appearance, Dr. Kambwili accused President Hakainde Hichilema of lying to citizens that the country's gross domestic product, GDP, is performing well due to its good governance. So let's zoom into that story that made headline in our news.
Opposition Patriotic Front presidential aspirant Chishimba Kambwili took his plea this morning, Wednesday, in a case he's accused of unlawful assembly after the Director of Public Prosecution issued a consent in respect of a second charge of expressing racial remarks. Dr. Kambwili is accused of holding unlawful assembly at his residence, a charge which he has denied before the Lusaka Magistrate Court this morning, while his co-accused Charles Kakula, a Patriotic Front youth, has also denied a charge of expressing racial remarks against the Tonga, Lozi and Kawande-speaking people. The court has adjourned their case for trial to the 26th of June. Meanwhile, speaking shortly after his court appearance to the media, Dr. Kambwili has wondered why the president is boasting about increased investment pledges.
Referred to decreased pledges under PF in 2021, 2020, 2019. The country was, the whole world was grappling with COVID-19. And during that COVID-19, no investor was pledging anything to invest anywhere because people were not sure. The world economy had collapsed. And how did you expect people to be pledging when there was COVID? When mining companies closed all over the world, you expected investors to be pledging? Now, because the COVID is over, investors have started pledging. You say it's my good leadership that has caused investors to pledge like that. No, Mr. President. Stop misleading the people.
Dr. Kambwili has accused President Hakainde Hichilema and his administration of failing to address the cost of living.
So you were misusing the graphs to try and mislead the people. So Serengeti was merely telling you we don't need graphs. We want the cost of living to go down. The problem we have with this president, Ichile Karipa Abantu Wufi, Beyonce, when you speak to the people, you think the people are stupid. And that's the problem we have with you. But President, stop Abantu Wufi. Positive growth has gone up because COVID is no longer there and all the countries are posting positive growth. Even Zambia is not excluded. So when you say, I am posting, Zambia is posting positive growth because of your leadership, and stop lying.
Miriam Kaimba reporting for Camnet TV News.
Mines Minister Paul Kabuswe says the race to have Mopani and Konkola copper mines become fully functional has not come to an end, as government is in the process of concluding the negotiations and will be making an announcement soon. Mr. Kabuswe, who addressed the media Wednesday morning, says the negotiations delayed to conclude because legal matters popped up during the negotiation process, but says the matter has been resolved and that negotiations will be concluded sooner than anticipated.
But believe you me, we are closer to closure than you think. And as the president said, certain legal issues cropped up which disturbed our timelines. There are certain things in the legal fraternity which you cannot block but allow time to pass. And we are to bite the bullet and allow time to pass and go beyond the first quarter. I want to assure the people of Zambia and the people of the Copper Belt.
Meanwhile, the minister has also revealed that the new mining policy has been released and that the government is in the process of setting up a minerals commission that will be monitoring mining activities in the country.
To be implemented. Why am I emphasizing the aspect of time? Because a lot of people have been saying, no, this government is just about rhetoric. They just talk. I don't know whether doing a policy is talking. Doing a policy is action. So we acted, we did a policy. From the policy, now we said we are implementing what the policy is saying. And number one priority, like I say, is the Minerals Commission, which we have done now.
Among other issues, the minister says government is going full throat in the mineral exploration and says 100 cooperatives have so far been formed and will be assisted with equipment for the use in mining explorations.
We are going full throttle exploration and mapping of this country, and these discussions are seriously underway. It requires time and it requires us to do the right thing. Cooperatives are in place. The Ministry of Mines is already procuring gold detectors and other equipment for these cooperatives to empower them. So you can see that we have a very clear path where we are going.
And when asked why the mining sector is not fully paying taxes to the Zambia Revenue Authority despite being given tax holidays, the minister had this to say.
I must know that in the month of June, the Pokabuswe mining company mined 50 tons. 50 tons will attract a particular level of tax or mineral royalty. So, for them to know, they will work hand in hand now with the regulator who will tell them.
Prudence Jota, reporting for Camnet TV News. There you have it. The first story that we zoomed in was that of Chishimba Kambwe, the Patriotic Front presidential aspirant. Remember, Dr. Kambwe is on the list of those aspiring to become president under the Patriotic Front. And he opposed government, rather President Hakainde Hichilema Patrick Soko's figures and the graphs he was showing on economic performance, saying, you are not the one who's attracting investment in this country. It is because there are certain aspects, such as the COVID-19, which has ended. That's why we now have investors coming into the country. But so this gives me a line of thought. Anyway, I don't want to add opinion to this because, of course, Dr. Gambidi there spoke yesterday. But I know also for investors to come in your country, they look at the environment around. Is the environment conducive for my investment?
Yeah, those are things they look at. Yeah,
but he argues to say, we don't want that. We need to see how you are resolving issues and not giving us graphs.
It's interesting, but whether COVID or not, but if it is at your time when these investors are coming, whether COVID or not, you have to take the credit. If things are not going okay, because of COVID again, you have to also bear the burden.
The burden and the consequences.
The consequences of that. So it's just a matter of time, and you know. I remember that government previously were adamant about climate change. But when climate change taught them a lesson and when the economy was misbehaving, they said everything that was going bad was due to climate change.
Due to climate change.
Climate change. So we are always reminded of these consequences. But always let's remember that there will always be these shocks that will always attack us as a country, as a continent, as the globe. No, so now we always have to find ways of recovering around that. How we recover is what is important. If we are recovering by making sure that we have more investment, that's good. And if we are recovering without attracting any investment, it's not a good indicator.
There is a problem in the economy, because where investors cannot come, it means there is a problem. For every investor to come, like me, if I'm to look for which country I would love to invest my resources in, Patrick Soko, I would definitely not want to go and invest in a country, for example, Somalia or Sudan, where there is war. Yes. Why would you go and invest in a country where there is war? You know that your investment are not safe. COVID is done, but people are running away from certain areas.
Who's going to buy your product?
Into Zambia. Yes, who's
how
going to buy your
are you going to protect your workers?
Of course. So you look at
your investment.
The environment around that has been provided by those who are in government. And then you're going to say, okay, in Zambia, my investments are safe. And Zambia, I know at the moment we have quite a number of investors who are rushing into Zambia. I think I've got that background information of quite a number of investors who are expressing interest in investing in Zambia, because, you know, we have the environment, we have water, we have good weather patterns. We know what has been happening in our neighboring countries like Malawi, Patrick Soko, and other countries where they've been having these cyclones and stuff like that. You will realize that for some countries it has been occurrent. And when you look at your investment, we saw what happened in South Africa. Toyota just lost out on a number of things because their factory, when they had that issue, even their factory was affected. So you place an investment in a particular country, but even the weather is not conducive. So you talked about the issue of climate change, and then also people look at political atmosphere. If there is war in a country, trust me, even me, I wouldn't invest my resources where there is war. I would look at where is it peaceful, and I know that once I do my investment, I'll get my returns. So we are having people coming into Zambia because they've seen there is this conducive environment that is good for business. And of course, there might be some who are still holding on, because we know we've got this huge debt burden as a country where, you want to invest in the government securities, you want to buy bonds from government. You can't, because you are scared. What if I also don't get my returns like my friend? Remember, we got bonds, we got this, and we've been unable to pay, became the first African country to default. So other investors are still holding on. But imagine if this issue of debt was to be resolved, and now people are settled. We are going to see a number of investment coming into the country. And all this is because of a conducive environment that those who are in government provide. But if this UPND also administration does not fully deal with the issue of the debt, there will be no investment. Even them, when they leave, will say they failed, unless the person who's going to resolve this issue is the one who will be given praise, because they are the ones who've handled the biggest elephant in the room, and now we'll be having a number of investment coming in. So when people are investing, they look at all these small factors that sometimes we don't even realize.
Interesting. Well explained, madam. But now this is time we have to excuse the screens and get to... Yeah, we'll be talking... And then
also, Patrick, something that is interesting. Yesterday, the Zambia Statistical Agency did disclose a decrease in the monthly inflation rate for the month of May to 9.9% from 10.2%. Remember, after a period of 9 months, for the first time last month, we saw inflation rate go to the 2-digit number, which is 10.2. And, people started talking to say with high fuel price, and of course what we are seeing happening, the debt not working out, we might see even inflation rate go up. And even the Bank of Zambia, when they were doing their monetary policy announcement last week, they also indicated to say, inflation might be above what we projected. But in the month of May, we've seen a reduction to 9.9% from 10.2 that was recorded in April. So Zamstat statistician General Mlengamsepa says this means that on average, the prices of food and services increased by 9.9% between May 2022 and May 2023, and attributed the price movement of selected non-food items. So Mr. Msepa explained that the export volumes of refined copper have also reduced from the cumulative volume refined copper exported from January to April 2022, standing at 249.8 thousand metric tons in comparison to 2022, which was 297.8 thousand metric tons. So the Zambia Statistical Agency has also appealed to private institutions to freely provide Zamstat enumerators with the information once called upon. What it means here is that most of the time, you know, you're calling these companies, you want to get information, and they don't want to disclose information. They've invested in Zambia, but they don't want to be disclosing that information. So the statistician general there was appealing to say, you know, when you're called upon, you want information, can you please make this?
Do you have to appeal and beg?
Imagine, huh?
Can we just go work on a statutory instrument and make these things work out?
Yes, and Mr.
If we compel them.
Also said he is saddened that some institutions have been shunning from providing the information to the officers. If we are to develop as a country, we need information, Patrick Soko, to be made readily available. But if these companies cannot disclose the information to the relevant authorities who needs it, then we are not doing well as a country. Then we are in a dilemma. So the Zambia Statistical Agency there has appealed to institutions to be providing them with information when they are called upon. Then also inflation rate, they are decreased. But unfortunately, when it comes to copper, we are not performing well as a country. This is what we are talking about. Today's topic of discussion is Africa really free? Why is it that even Zambia's largest forex earner, which is copper, is not performing well? We've seen a reduction since I think last year, October, November, December, January this year. We've been seeing slight reduction in copper production, which is also affecting how much money we are making from copper. And remember, in the first quarter, we did see the mining sector not contribute enough taxes according to what was expected, which even prompted government to go to the reserves to offload money because the mining sector are not paying taxes. So we've seen a decrease in copper production. And then remember also, Zambia has got a target of producing 3 million metric tons of copper by the year 2031.
In a decade.
By the year 2031.
Yeah.
Yes, they have that. But if we are seeing this decrease in copper, Patrick Soko production, are we attaining the 3 million?
That hinders the process. So we just hope that if those modalities can be addressed, we can meet the target. But if we continue delaying, then we have to change the target. We have to increase the years at which we need to meet that tonnage. Because it won't be easy. It's a long journey.
Of course it is. But before maybe we say bye to the screens, let's just see Mr. Mslepa Mlenga and what he said yesterday regarding inflation and the issue of copper production.
With respect to some of the respondents or would-be respondents, especially during the times that we are collecting different official statistics, data from persons or individuals, or indeed companies or firms, where some firms, companies, organizations, they give challenges to enumerators, some of them at the point of refusing to provide the data, and others not providing the data in the form and format requested for by the agency. I would like to basically mention that data for any country to develop, to make solid decisions, data is important. And the government requires quality data, timely data, data that is credible and trustworthy to make decisions, to intervene in sectors that require intervention. And therefore, I would like to urge all those institutions that sometimes want to not to provide this data, that they will or they are basically contravening the.
That was the Zambia Statistics Agency giving us an update there. As per tradition, on a monthly basis, we have to know how inflation is performing, how the economy is performing on various sectors. And now this is the time when we have to excuse the screen and say bye-bye until we come tomorrow with Prudence Chota. She comes with the business for breakfast. This has been me, Patrick Soko, and Prudence Chota. Remember to always keep it on Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel.
Bye for now.